Hello, preppers. Welcome back to another episode of a Prepper podcast. And yes, for your enjoyment, I'm not on my own again. You don't have to just listen to me. I'm joined by Jay. How are you doing, Jay?
Hello, good evening. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Oh, I appreciate you being here. Somebody commented on one of my videos recently saying, "What's all this about? You need therapy." So I did one better. Jay is a professional psychotherapist. So we're here to talk about psych prepping, as it were. I think that was your wording,
Absolutely.
Jay. So first of all, let's know about you and prepping side of you.
Okay.
Do you class yourself as a prepper? Is the first question I always ask.
Absolutely.
So there's no denying it, like, because a lot of
Prep,
people deny
humor, whatever you want to say. Yeah, I'm all of the above.
Right. Okay. So what made you start or become a prepper or make you more aware to it?
Yeah, no, really good opening question. So it was, I think I started prepping seriously about seven and a half years ago. But prior to that, I've always been someone who's tried to sort of think, one or two steps ahead. So I'd always have a little bit of extra food in the cupboards or, a few bottles of water, just the general stuff.
Yeah.
But about seven and a half years ago, had a really profound experience, really, it's probably want of a better word, due to some of the work I was doing. And it was from that experience that I'll say a bit more actually, so it's not too cryptic. So I'm very interested in shamanism, and not just the sort of Native American shamanism, but sort of the Nordic and Mongolian shamanism. So I'd actually be doing a lot of work with a shaman who was from the Lakota Sioux tribe from Pine Ridge Reservation in the States.
Wow.
And I'd been doing some work for 3 or 4 years with this guy, with some other people. And part of that work is you do what's called a shamanic journey. So you have these alternate states of consciousness that you can sort of trigger through the rhythmic beating of a drum. And during this really prolonged journey, I had this profound, almost vision of a number of events. Don't really need to go into them here, but needless to say, it was enough for me to come home and start prepping, seriously start prepping. And have been for, as I say, for it would be 8 years, back end of this year. And that was the catalyst for it. And I don't stop now. It's always on my mind. I'm always looking.
After the camera goes off, I might get some more information.
Okay.
So I've got some timelines here. So
yeah, we'll do it for another day.
If you know something I don't know. Well, I mean, it's not even, to be honest, the state of the world at the moment, it's not even a case of, you don't have to be Nostradamus to realize something is very close to hitting the fan. I mean, I'm monitoring the solar flares, and the only blessing of a giant CME bigger than the Carrington event would be that it'll stop the nuclear war. So, yeah, it's weird. That could be classed as divine intervention if you're that way inclined. But so I mean, that's a really good answer. It's interesting, very interesting answer. So, what are your preps focused around? Are you generally just preparing for every kind of disaster, or are you specific? Because some people are doing it for, like I say, blackouts, solar flares, social disorder. Is there anything that has your main focus?
No, they're all of interest. So again, being how I'm wired, and I can come on to that as we get into the psychological side. But yeah, I think I look at it from grid down situation, civil unrest, sort of right on your front doorstep scenarios, through to, like you, I track the solar flare activity and the CMEs. Through to the strong possibility of there being a sort of a ballistic missile attack, or air pulse attack, or a nuclear discharge somewhere on the globe, which will then ripple out and have ramifications. So I cover for everything, whether I'm bugging in, staying at home, or whether I need to go out on foot, or whether I need to get into my car. But I've been doing it, as I say, nearly 8 years. So it's almost become not a hobby, and it's not an obsession, but I am pretty keen on it.
Yeah. Oh, it's fine. I get obsessed with everything. It's not a problem. The weird thing I found, though, mainstream wise, is I mean, I've got a lot of friends who don't do this.
Yeah.
A lot of friends that don't even know I do this. But
Yeah.
people do, and some that do. If I'd have said to them 5 years ago, I'm prepping for this, this, and this,
Yeah.
they've gone, "You're nuts, go wear a tinfoil hat." But I tell them now, and they're like, "Yeah, makes sense," because they can see everything going on. It's unreal.
Yeah, my mum's 84. I moved from urban Leeds to rural Scotland 16 months ago, purposefully. It wasn't for any other reason than to get out the urban environment and have more options. And there was a couple of things playing on my mind. That my mum actually came up for 5 months and stayed not too far from me. And during that 5 months was quite a revelation, because she gets it now. She may well be the oldest prepper in the UK, because she's so up for it.
Love that.
She's finally go, "Oh yeah, I can see that and I get that." So yeah, but I'm very careful who I talk to. But she's my mum, and she's got it. The penny's dropped.
Yeah, it's weird though, because the older generation kind of have that in them naturally, don't they? I didn't think any of my family prepped, and I did a video not so long ago where I snuck around my mum's house and had a look in all the cupboards and stuff, and I'm like, this is where I get it from. So, the psychology of prepping. Now, I want to throw in my 2 cents before I get completely dismissed and you go all over it. But I put it so I've got a fear of flying. Okay. Right? A completely irrational fear, right? Yeah. I'm a very logical person. So I know I'm more likely to get hit by a bus outside. I'm more likely to have problems with the car on the way. I know all the statistics. I know how safe it is.
Yeah.
I've put my fear of flying down now to a lack of control. Now, in some way, I see that as what prepping is. It's taking control of something that we don't have control of. Like, we don't have control if a nuke is launched. But we can control how we deal with it, how we react to it, how we prepare for it. So that's what I explain to people when they say, "Why do you do it?"
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think to that? Is that would you say that's accurate, or is it personal?
I think your fear is your fear, and you're the expert of that. I would just be a visitor sitting alongside you to sort of explore that. But yes, your fear is your fear, but I think it's really founded in a knowing, and it may sound like I'm digressing. I'm not. I'm trying to keep it on point, but we've all, from my perspective, and clearly there'll be people with their own view, but the way I look at it is that we've all experienced a form of death. And what I mean by that is, people say, "When were you born?" You were born on the 1st of. I will ask people, "When were you rebirthed?" And they look at me like I'm a bit strange, and I am a bit strange, and I'm quite proud of that. But what I mean by rebirth is, so the baby's in the womb, and it's in the womb for 9 months. That's all it knows 24/7. It's fed, it's watered, it's warm, it's safe. So its basic sort of physiological needs are already being met. And then, lo and behold, it comes through the birthing canal, or it's extracted through cesarean. That's a death to the womb. So the baby dies to that world it knows, and it comes through the birthing canal, or it's pulled out, and then there's all these lights. It's a really harsh environment, and it gets its backside smacked. So welcome to planet Earth, so to speak. So it's already had the trauma of death of one world and rebirth into another. So if I then pull it through to the example you've given, the fears that I carry with me are very genuine. It's called death anxiety. We have this existential dread of, will we go through another birthing canal of some sort, and will it be really painful, and what is on the other end? And of course, we get the realms of religion and spirituality, and that's not for now. But I think we all carry it, because we are a conscious, sentient being that recognizes that we are also mortal. And it doesn't matter whether you've got a bunker or no bunker. It doesn't matter how well prepped you are. The mortality rate for everyone is 100%.
Yeah.
And we all know that. And I think that hits on the shoulder.
That sits on my back all day long. I'm still waiting for them to show me how to upload myself into an iPad so I can live forever. But I understand where you're coming from with that 100%. And I suppose, I mean, some people don't know, do they? Some people have no. I've got, my brother is the complete opposite of me. No fear of death. whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's got a death wish. He doesn't, you know, he's got kids and everything. He wants to be here, but it just doesn't play on his mind like it plays on mine. So it's really odd because it can't be upbringing because we were brought up exactly the same.
I think a lot has to do with your, when I say your, I don't mean as maybe just yourself, Mike. I mean, I'm generalizing, but sort of one's experiences and perception of life. You know, your experience, you were both brought up in the same, I'm assuming the same household, but your take on events will be different to your brother's. So you will filter them differently to your brother, how he filters them. And that's where we have a difference of perceptions and difference of value systems and things like that. And if he has a lower level of sort of existential dread, then that's a good place to be.
Well, until the shit hits the fan and he's coming and knocking on my door because he's done no preparing whatsoever.
I think you're just coming around to the point you made. I think there is certainly an element of control. There is certainly an element of forward planning. And I also see prepping. People have said to me, well, so not that this is about me, but I don't have a fear of death, and it's easy for me to sit here and say that. Okay. I don't want a long, protracted, painful death. But if you said to me, Jay, there's a big flare and it's about to hit on your region of Scotland, part of me will probably breathe a sigh of relief. But but there's another part that'd be like, oh, is that it? I want to experience more. But the way I try and talk to people when I talk about prepping is there's just something about respecting your earth walk. And we are here, and it's how do we maximize that and how do we get the most out of it? And yes, we're all going to die. I'm going to die. Okay. In one sense. So what, in 100 years time, it won't matter. But I want to dial it all up to 10, max 10 sort of thing. And that's why I prep, because I just want the full range of experience before my time's up, good, bad, or indifferent. And I'm not saying that in a sadomasochistic way. I'm only here once. You're only here once. So let's have it all, sort of thing.
Because nothing grinds my gears as much as when I've done like a video based on like nuclear fallout and stuff like that, and you get somebody commenting on there going, oh yeah, but if the New England, we're all done for anyway, so you may as well not bother, just kiss your ass goodbye. I'm like, you found the wrong channel. Why are prepping suggestions even coming up to you on YouTube? I can't get round that mentality. If not for my kids and the missus, I will always, I'll do everything, bend over backwards, even if there's a 2% chance we can survive it,
Which is different to desperation. I always think there'll be a survival stage, but for me, the outset is always to thrive and to find like-minded people where, and I don't mean this all love and light, but like-minded people where there's an opportunity to create something that can't be any worse than what it is now.
Famous last words. Last words.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So you touched on, I mean, you mentioned in a message to me about situational awareness of others. Can you explain a bit more what you mean with that?
Yeah. So if I come at it in sort of bite-sized pieces and try and layer it up, each layer links into the next. And then that way it can give a clearer perspective rather than trying to just take what is a big subject into something small.
I'm just a passenger on your journey. Okay, you take me
there. It's all about me.
Right, it's all about you. It's all about you.
So imagine we're in space. We're looking down on Earth. Okay. And this is billions of years ago, if one subscribes to that theory of evolution. And we look at it from a biological perspective, then there was, right at the start, there was organic material. And organic material, whatever it is, needs primal drivers, primal survival drivers, as we call them. So it needs some form of sustenance. It needs some form of safety in order for it to evolve. And it needs to procreate in order to evolve. So we then move on X however many years through that evolutionary process. And as we are now, as you are, as I am, stripping it all back, we are an animal, full stop.
Yeah.
And we are a mammal, and a biosocial mammal, so a biologically social mammal. So that, what I mean by that is we have altruistic tendencies. So you talked about your family, and you'll have your network of friends, and you want to do things. You know, a stranger may fall over in the street, and you might go up and say, "You're all right." That's the altruistic sort of side of things, and they're sort of the rules of being a biosocial mammal. Think of a troop of chimpanzees that groom each other. What they're doing is interacting. So we're a mammal, but we're also an apex predator. Physiologically, we are designed as an apex predator. The way the eyes are positioned, the eyebrows to stop the sweat coming into the eyes, the forward position of the eyes, the fact that we're bipedal, so we can move quickly. We have that. We have the dexterity to move. We are designed as an apex predator. Again, I've paired it right back, and the primal drivers that were there from day one when we were organic material, they're still the same now within us. We carry those primal drivers. They're more defined though. So we have a need for water. We now have the need for food, for safety, for warmth, i.e. fire. We need to be able to rest in a safe place, and the drive to procreate because we want our legacy to continue. So those drivers are there, but they are much more finely honed and tuned. And of course, around all of that is competition. So at the moment, we don't really need to compete with each other. You can go to the supermarket and you want a tin of beans, there's 50 tins of beans. So the competition element is relatively low. So 21st century species people, yes, we're in a suit or a hoodie or whatever, but we still have the primal drivers. We're still an animal, so to speak. Okay, so within the needs of the animal, we have what's called a hierarchy of needs. So there was a psychologist called Maslow. It's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or pyramid of needs. So think of a pyramid. At the bottom is level 1, and at the top is level 5. And you can't get to level 5 unless you've worked from level 1 upwards. And level 1 and level 2 are very, very tightly connected, but they're basically our basic needs. So they are the food, the warmth, the water, the warmth, the safety, the security. That's physical, that's emotional, that's in terms of having some form of housing or safe space, health, finance. They're the basic needs. We then have our psychological needs, which is to belong to something. We need to belong to a family. We want to be loved and liked and have intimate relationships. We then have level 4, which is our esteem needs, which is the egoic needs. So the needs for prestige and a sense of accomplishment and purpose and status and recognition. And then the top sort of right at the top of the pyramid is what we call self-fulfillment needs. So that's where we feel we've achieved our potential. We've done everything we feel we want. Okay. And we're guru.
For anyone watching who happened to skip ahead to that point, when he's talking about a triangle and level, this isn't Scientology, and he's not trying to get your money, just so you're aware. Skip back and watch the whole thing.
Yeah, not pyramid selling here. So if we take a step back, so we're an animal who needs these basic primal drivers, and then these drivers can then be put into a theoretical triangle. So we have basic needs, psychological needs, and self-fulfillment needs. So that's a hierarchy of needs, and that's another platform to it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get into the psychology, how we're wired, and we have the brain has what's called a limbic system. Now, the limbic system is at the back of the brain. It covers both sides of the brain. It's essentially part of the brain that processes and regulates emotions. And within the limbic system, there's a specific part called the amygdala. Now, the amygdala's primary role is to regulate emotions and emotional responses. It will make sense in about 5 minutes. And that we have 4 main responses, really: fear, joy, anger, and sadness. So the amygdala and then the limbic system is just looking after those 4 key emotions. Now, when we start putting the death anxiety, so your fear of flying or whatever my fears are, when we put death anxiety in there, this existential dread, what happens is the limbic system fires up. So if you've been out and hypothetically, you go into a pub, Have you ever gone in and your spider senses have just started kicking in and you're going, oh, I don't like the feel of this?
Yeah. Yes.
That's your limbic system. Okay. It's primal. It's there. You just can't turn it off. People will have their own experiences of it, but that's what it's tuning in at. Now, generally within normal society, when it's functioning sort of in a rational way, it stays in a aroused state. It's threat assessing. You're crossing a busy road. It's your limbic system that's threat assessing whether the number 54 bus is coming around the corner at 30 miles an hour. What happens though is that it can become hyper aroused, and this is what's happening now within the world that we pick up as conscious beings. We just pick that energy up, but all of the sort of doom porn that's been put out there is specifically triggers the limbic system. It triggers the death anxiety. So people then get into a hyper aroused state of anxiety and of fear.
So that's why they've got more subscribers than me.
Because what happens when the limbic system's hyper aroused is it releases adrenaline. Mm-hmm. So the endocrine system fires up, it releases adrenaline, and people generally can feel like they can have a heightened sensory experiences because they're frightened. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's hardwired into us, and it's referred to as fight, flight, or freeze, which is often a thrown away sort of series of 3 words. There are actually 5. There's fawn and flop, but we'll say fawn and flop for another session. Let's focus on fight, flight, and freeze. Now these are triggered when there is immense stress, but actually, if we think back to the events of 2020 and all of the lockdown and all of the stuff that was being pumped out through the media, what happened there is that it was very much triggering people's death anxiety. Mm-hmm. And it was very much triggering the limbic system. So people becoming hyper aroused of, is that other person a threat to my health? Am I then going to be a threat to granny? So people are going around much more in a fight, flight, or freeze sense. So people's tempers are shorter. They may feel more combative, more protective. You're in my space, or you've not got a mask, or you can see how people lose the sense of perspective and common sense, which isn't that common, and resort back to the primal drivers. So we go back to the triangle, we go back to level 1 and level 2. It's a basic attack. Sorry, it's an attack on the basic functions of survival. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening in the brain. And people in flight mode are, they're generally defensive or combative or reactive. So reactive, if we break the word react down to react, it's reenact. So what happens when they're in fight mode is they just go back to learned behavior. So if someone's learned behavior is just to lash out with violence, generally that's what they will do. Someone's behavior is to regress, that's what they'll do. It's reacting, reenacting. So when we're in this hyper aroused state, which of course we are more now given what's been coming through the mainstream media and the alt media, people are getting funneled more and more and more into their primal drivers and level 1 and level 2 of the hierarchy. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, with that, there's people that don't.
Yes.
So there's people that just don't react. There's people that just are not triggered by this. And I hate to touch on it, and like suicides and stuff like that. There's people that just don't have that instinct.
Yeah.
Which I'm afraid is getting more and more recently.
Yeah.
What do you think is that a physiological thing, or is that a psychological thing?
Very much a psychological aspect. What happens is when we are faced with trauma all the time is we start to dissociate, we start to shut down, the brain starts to shut down. It's a survival technique. It's just too much for them to handle, for the brain to handle, for the body to handle. So it files it away. I don't want to deal with that. So they dissociate, they go numb, people go numb, and they just turn off and tune out. Sometimes consciously, often unconsciously, but that trauma, whatever that traumatic event was or series of events were, the body remembers, and we all have our own limits as to what we psychologically handle. So children So I spent a lot of time working with children and young people who were within child protection and had been abused, and it was sometimes really it was really difficult to work with because they just locked it away.
Yeah.
That was the way they survived. Whereas other children were okay to open up to it. But you'll find that when those children get to an adult age, some will remember, some won't.
Yeah.
So we lock it away. So coming back to the point you raised, the brain can just get too overwhelmed. If we think of the last 3 years from 2020, it's just been all trauma. And now we've got, then it was leading into, Ukraine, and now the picture's getting bigger, and it's all about fear and trauma. And people get to a point where they just burn out. That's for want of a better word. Just burn out to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's scary that happens. That can happen.
Yes.
But I've the way you describe it, I've witnessed it.
Yes.
Without going into detail of anybody else's life, but I've witnessed it, so I could see how people do react in that way.
Yeah, I think there's certainly I've noticed both professionally, but also the antenna are always out. Society feels very much more fragmented now, and there's a lot more hostility and wariness, and there is just a lot more fear of who is this other person and what may they do to me. I think people are, I'm generalizing, but there are a lot of people are much more wired, triggering the primal wiring within them, and those drivers that are there, rather than stepping back, going, well, actually, I can take a more rational view to this. And of course, people ultimately, the real extreme of this is that people can experience so much trauma, or there can be so much sort of anguish in their life. Right at the far end of the spectrum is people then who display sociopathic tendencies, which, again, having worked with adults, the psychopaths are actually, you sort of almost know what you're getting a little bit more. But from a sociopathic perspective, there's a lot more. It's a lot trickier, because these are people who, it's the phrase, is it nature or nurture? These are people who have experienced things that have then desensitized them and have changed things, so they are in survival mode for themselves, and capable and willing, with no emotion, to actually conduct those. And that's a fear for me. Should a big brown sticky one hit the fan, is very quickly that could escalate, so that people will become emotionally numb, and it will all be about their own sense of survival.
Yeah.
And that could be right on your doorstep.
Yeah, that's interesting, because there's different types of preppers out there, as you know. And when I first started, I was very lone wolf. I'm going to survive all this on my own.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long for me to realize I need community, I need people, I need, so is that a different element? Because the people that are the lone wolves are still on that solo, just look after me survival track. So
yeah, I think before I moved up here, I was involved in a couple of groups back in Yorkshire, and I sort of I got booted out of one and then left the other, a little bit too outspoken, maybe, to the point. With any groups are great if you're all on the same page. But if we imagine there is some, something's happened, real monumental, a nuclear warhead lands on, where do you live? Are you Manchester based?
I'm northwest. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say it's further south then, so you're not affected. But boom, it goes off in London. Okay, the amount of anxiety, and quite rightly so, that would trigger in people. None of us have experienced a solar flare. None of us experienced EMP. None of us experienced, nuclear. So we don't know how we will react.
Yeah.
So it is very much a case, and we come back to the psychological prepping, is to try to know yourself as much as possible, but have an awareness of who your oppos are as well. You just don't know whether they will fight, flight, or freeze. You don't know whether they will go. You could have a group of 10 people, all of you get on, but then all of a sudden there's 5 lone wolves, because they just go into utter panic mode and utter. So you just don't know. So I have a mixed view on the groups. I think groups can be incredibly powerful if you're on the same page and you're all wanting to sort of thrive. Where I've moved to, I am lone wolf. The very few people I've half hinted at anything at, they are looking for the Baco foil wrapped around my head. So yeah, I keep myself to myself, which in one sense is a shame, because I think if you have got numbers, it's more beneficial.
Do you think for yourself personally that might change after the fact? So say, you know, it's the end of the world as we know it, and we're 6 months down the line, and visitors come across you, like, you know, a family looking for help. Do you think that would change after the fact, that you'd be more open to then building a group in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've preempted really my answer, but to expand on it, that's very much how I think. I don't say this in a egoic, arrogant way at all, because I don't know what will happen or how I would behave, but I'm confident in my depth of preparation, both at home and away from home. As I said earlier, I moved to rural Scotland, so I am forest based. I have all the resources there. I do have a skill set that enables me to use that, having a background in the military as well, albeit some time ago. So I back myself to a point.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, for me, it would be very much ride it out. I would just keep it ultra low profile, and very much along the lines of what I've been talking about this evening. It would be, I'm looking at the other person thinking, you're an apex predator.
Yeah.
How are you wired? What have you lost? What are you, how far are you prepared to go?
Yeah.
How far am I prepared to go? So I'm constantly, I would be threat assessing.
Yeah, it's going to be a massive trust thing to
Without
try and
doubt.
build trust on that situation.
And that's why the military training is so intense, and the psychology behind it is so advanced.
Yeah,
because it takes people and it strips. It's not just about the fitness. It is very much psychological. It's stripping everything down.
Yeah,
it's putting you all through the experiences to see whether you can gel or not, and who will fight, who will flight, who will freeze.
Yeah, the first 6 weeks is to break you, and they don't hide that fact. You know, the recruitment office hide that fact. They tell you it's wonderful sweetness and roses, but when you get there, the corporals, bombardiers, and sergeants do not hide that fact. They are there to break you down and make you into something else.
And you get that trust. Then you might not you might go to the NAFI and not like the person you're with, but the following day it might be you might have to get on with something, and you can trust that person because ultimately you've been through that process. And I guess coming back to your point, I think post hitting the fan, there would be processes that people will go through or not go through.
Yeah.
And certainly, I always think if you can get through 30 days, that will thin a lot of people out. You certainly get through the 100 days, and what you're left with will be, that'll be interesting. And then you have to be careful who you take on board.
That's the worrying thing, because there's lots of people's theories on that, like the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, how many people will perish, and touch wood, nothing ever happens. I prep for the worst but hope for the best.
Yeah.
So let's hope nothing happens. But if it does, it's a shame, because a lot of them people that are going that will suffer in them first 30 to 16 to 90 days, whatever timeline you're looking at, are the people that, for no fault of their own, just weren't ready for something like that. And the people that survive after that are either exactly on your wavelength or exactly the person you have to fear. There's two extremes. There's going to be no middle ground.
No.
There might be the lucky guy in the middle ground who just happens.
I think should something extreme happen, it will just very quickly pare everything back. And the purpose of us having this discussion this evening is that you can have your water and your food and your fire and your shelter and your comms and your security, or however that may be. But ultimately, it's knowing more about yourself and your boundaries, what they would be, how you think you would respond to something, what's acceptable, what isn't. But always looking at that other person or those other groups of people. What have they been through? How are they motivated anyway? You're just not sure. And again, I think there's when I was in this group down south, I was just delivering something similar to this with some other bits and bobs, and we got onto the issue of food, and I was saying, well, once everyone's eaten the cat and the dog, then what are you going to do? You're going to go out and see if there's any sheep or cows, and and I just said, well, the thing I would do is I'd go to the nearest stables and check out where all the horses are, because you don't even need to run around a field for them. They're just in a stable. Now, clearly, I would not want to do that. Could I do that? I have no idea. Do I want to do that? Sat here, no. But there was members of the audience who were utterly horrified and got really angry at me because they thought I was going to go and eat their horse. And I'll say, no, I'm not. I'm just putting it out there, is that what would you do to protect your horse, and what would another person do to get that horse? Because they may well be someone like you with, wife, children, who you have had your shelter decimated. Mm-hmm. You've had all your kit taken. You've kept yourself to yourself, and you are absolutely at wit's end. What would you do? And these are the psychological sort of examples that I try and put out. Mm-hmm. To go through. And of course, you can't answer them until it's fine talking the talk, but walking it is different. But these people who were triggered in the audience, and I wasn't being a smart ass, I was just saying, look, maybe these are things to think about, because I wouldn't want to do that, but I will absolutely put money on it that someone will.
Yeah.
You need to be able to size that person up and decide what you're going to do about it.
To be fair, the horse owner who loves the horses, if they're in that situation and it's them or you, and you're starving, I'm sorry, the nicest horse owners in the world will still do something like that. It is what it is. It's you start to get back to that survival instinct again.
Absolutely. And it's fine and dandy going, what's in your bug out bag and what's in this bag and what's in that bag. But when we start getting into the psychological side of stuff, it can trigger a lot of things within people.
But that's what they don't prepare for. That's what nobody's preparing for.
Yeah.
It's like you can have, I think I've touched on it with Blue in her podcast not so long ago. The title was All the Gear and No Idea, because that's what I've come across. A lot of people, they'll sit there and they'll talk to you and they'll have shelves full of stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter if when the SHTF, you just panic and you don't know what to do. You know what I mean? It's all right. And you can train as much as you want till you're in that situation. You still don't know.
You just don't know.
Yeah. There's soldiers that have been through that basic training, that have been broken down, been molded up until they're in combat, and the moment comes to pull that trigger.
Yeah.
Nobody still knows whether they can or not.
Exactly. So that's the big unknown. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, a person can come back to, not denialism, that's maybe too strong a word, but it's such an uncomfortable topic that they don't want to spend time thinking about it. They may well spend time thinking about getting more rice or, more firelighters or whatever. But as I'm sure it's coming through now, I'm passionate about people's mental health and well-being, and I'm sort of really, really wary about people's mental health and well-being as well, particularly if the fan's all clogged up. Because that, if you were to say, look, Jay, what's the biggest thing? The biggest thing for me is looking out my front door and just seeing it all collapsed, and just seeing this horde of people utterly unhinged, in full on primal survival driver mode. They're not going to give a monkeys about having a chat with me and do you want to barter and trade, and I've got some beans with sausages, but I could do with a little bit of rice.
You have to wait for the chaos to settle before the markets open up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is probably what's driven me to look at mags more, because I always had in my head that, I've been in situations where I've had to defend myself. I've had to defend friends. I've had to defend family. I know how I feel in certain situations, and my leg will start twitching in a certain situation, but then I'll go all in, Yeah. So I think one-on-one, I could defend the family if I need to. Yeah. And plus, obviously, as preppers, we have equipment, we have tools to protect us as well. So there's all that aspect. But if that's not one person, if that's 20 people, you can be as trained as you want to.
Yeah.
Are you gonna? So I mean, this is what started making me look more at bug out if I need to, because I'm in an urban place.
Yes.
We've got bug out locations all the way up into Scotland, and not just we're going to go and camp in the Highlands like some people do.
Yeah.
That's where the missus is from. So
okay, lovely. Yeah.
We're actually looking at moment wrecking the journey that would take on foot to get there, which is hell of a walk.
Well, after this, I'll give you my details, because I'm southwest Scotland, so you can do it in bite-sized chunks.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll pass by and
the thing I'd say about Scotland is, which I learned very quickly last year. You hear about it, but you've got to experience it. The midges, they take no prisoners. Midges and ticks. Honestly,
oh yes,
they are. Oh boy, it's like you can't even breathe. Unbelievable. So all this Highland thing is great. However, not between the months of May.
That's not just the Highlands. I went to Dumfries in Galloway last year, camping, lovely campsite, and everyone's camping up this top end near this old stately home sort of thing.
Yeah.
And at the bottom end, you could see over like the estuary, the water coming in.
Yeah.
And it was a lovely view. And I thought, nobody's camping down there. I'll camp down there. So when I set the tent up, it was lovely. No problems. Next day, oh my God, I had to walk through it like it was soup. That's how many midges there were.
Yeah.
What's this in my drink? Just drink it. It's protein. It's fine.
I mean, D&G, Dumfries and Galloway is where I am. I think I know where you mean, but we'll pick that up later.
yeah, definitely. Optec. No, I mean, we could probably do another one of these shows at some point anyway, because we are like getting towards the time when we'd usually end. Is there anything you want to touch on just before we do?
No, I can say thank you for giving some space for me to just to talk it through. I hope that it's come across in a way that is very much from my heart. For the benefit of those that are listening. It's take what you want and leave what you want. But I would really encourage people just to recognize that, when if you do catch the eye of someone else, me included, it is an apex predator. And I don't mean that in a doomy way, but just maybe go through those stages of and realize that we are animals. We just want to survive. But clearly that can be really ugly. Whilst at the same time, it can be a really beautiful thing as well, with people coming together and supporting each other. It's just, that's what I mean about situational awareness. Is just always be thinking about it. Who's in front of you? What are they up to? What's the vibe? If the vibe's not good, walk away. If the vibe's fine, it's fine.
The more I prepare, the more I'm like that. It's sometimes the missus will say to me, "What you're looking around so much for?" Because obviously people know I'm in the northwest, but we go to the Trafford Centre sometimes, major supermarket, not by choice. I don't go there by choice. I'm dragged there. But when we're there, if we sit down to eat or anything, I'm looking at all the exits. I'm looking at the people around me. I'm looking at her, and she'll be looking at me like, "What are you doing? Just chill out." I will. Well, I will. Just give me my moment to assess. And it came in handy once at the Trafford Centre. I was there when the alarm started going off, and it's like a fear-mongering tannoy, because it doesn't say there's a fire. It doesn't say there's this. It just says there's been an incident in this area of the Trafford Centre. Please evacuate, on repeat.
Yeah.
And everyone's piling for these food court doors that go outside. Absolutely loads of people. Now I listened to the message in this area of the Trafford Centre, not in the Trafford Centre, in this area of the Trafford Centre. So as they're piling down, I saw an exit that went up a side and into a different section of the Trafford Centre and went out that way. And we got out quicker than people that were piling up in a crush to get out the doors. So that's what situational awareness can help, even in everyday situations.
Absolutely. And I hear what you're saying about just bringing things to an end, but just on a final note to sort of square the circle off, or circle the square off, whatever the phrase is that through that situational awareness, what happens is the more we do it, we either open up or rewire our neural pathways. So the more we do it, the more it becomes familiar, the more it becomes habit, the more it becomes learned behavior, and the less anxiety we then carry. So what happens is, should something happen, we're able to maybe take a step back and not react, but respond. And if we think of, say, a paramedic or the fire and rescue, they're called first responders for a reason. not first reactors. They're
Yeah.
first responders. And what we do then is we're able to get a grip of ourselves by going, whoa, I'm reacting. I know what it is. It's my primal drivers. Hang on a minute. Whoa. You've got that awareness, and then you can look at what the task is at hand and respond to it in a way that meets your needs and the needs of others. That's all site prepping is. It is just, it's that constant work on it and not being frightened of going down those rabbit holes to get to a point where it just becomes habit.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to, like we said before, it's hard to actually train till you're in the situation.
Absolutely.
But would you say things like that, like, no, I want to say reenacting, but that's probably the wrong word, but playing out scenarios like that, do you think that helps? Like if people play out scenarios where they turn the power off for 24 hours, this is how we do it. Do you think that kind of thing helps to do that rewiring?
Absolutely. Well, that's a good test anyway, isn't it? Turn your power off for 3 days and see how you get on. My plans coming up through April are to go out into the woods. There's a couple of locations in the woods. Is to actually is to hump my gear out. So I've got a big 150 litre Bergen, which is probably 60 kilos. That's on my max. I have a range that I know I can, hump out with it on. So I'm going to go out to these locations and stay in them with the dog 2, 3, 4 days and nights. See how I get on.
Yeah.
If I don't like it, I can come home, but I'll learn so much.
Yeah.
Have the opportunity to do it because of where I am at my stage of my life and the time that's there. But yeah, absolutely. Just turn the power off, or don't use all these little things, or just think what would happen if, what would happen if I look. So you're driving to Trafford Centre and you see a mushroom cloud. It's not all the time. So I become obsessively driven by it, but once or twice a day, probably
just play it out. Yeah, I think a lot of people will do that. I do it anyway. As somebody asked me, that how are you preparing the kids? And they want me to do a video on it, and I am going to do a video on it. So I'm not going to give too many spoilers away. But one thing I do is if we go camping, we camp. It's not mod cons. It's not, oh, we have to have a pitch that's perfectly flat with electricity hookup. If we go camping, it is the bare minimum. You can't have, you can't have your tablet. No, you can't have this. It is, there's a book, entertain yourself. And that is a really good way to prepare for stuff like that, but make it fun, So
absolutely. It's like,
I'm going to do a video about this, how you make things like that fun by all means. But that's one thing I'd recommend because I don't think you could get it into them soon enough. I was very lucky. My stepdad ran the ACWS, the American Civil War Society.
Okay.
And so we were camping 1860s style from the age of about 11, 12-year-old. That's grass, canvas tent, candle, campfire.
Yeah.
Yeah. No mobile phones. Not that we all had phones back then anyway, but no mobile phones, no nothing like that. No pages, should I say. And it was just brilliant.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend it to anyone. Go camping. Don't take any modern conveniences with you. Even if you can, if you've got the luxury, turn your phone off because you have no bills, no worries, nothing for a weekend, and it's prepping.
Yeah. And it's seeing how long you can go without food as well. The longest I went was 5 days.
I did 7 days.
Really? Oh man. And just tracking how I function. And the peaks, the times of the day where I could function better than others, but on the fifth day I was white.
Yeah,
7's impressive. Well done.
The first time I did it, I think I went 3 or 4.
Yeah,
and that's the one I documented. I've got another channel. I'm not going to say what it is because it's dormant. It doesn't. I don't use it anymore. I'll speak to you afterwards. But I put a video on there. And I was doing the same thing. This is how I feel. This is
know, it's brutal.
Energy levels. That's but you watch them Survivor shows. I don't know if you watch stuff like that.
Yes.
I love them. I applied for the Bear Grylls one, but never got a response.
Okay.
Even my boss at the time said, if you get the application, you can go. It's fine. We'll give you the time off. I was like, get in. No response. But I watched them, and what kills them all is the first couple of days, if they don't just get that source of food and water and get some meals in them, that's it. They become lethargic. Everything starts not getting. It's a slippery slope.
Yes,
because your energy levels just So even if you've got 100 cans of beans in the cupboard, Don't wait till you're on the 99th can or you start trying to hunt or grow something. Start day one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I see all of this prepping, whether it's on a practical level or psychological level, it's all an investment. If you've got it, you don't need it, and if you need it, you've got it. And it's how much you want to invest. And when your burden's full of stuff, then maybe start thinking about the psych stuff, and then put it to the test. Try and see, walk it, and see whether you can do it. Like I say, it's challenging, but that's how you find yourself, and can be quite interesting. And like you said, you know, you go camping and there's midges everywhere. Well, it's fine and dandy if you can go to the cafe in the next town along, but if that's for real,
if that's life,
that is uncomfortable.
Do you know what? I think I got used to them after the third day. I just stopped feeling. You stop feeling them, don't you, after a while? Right, we will end it there. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on here. If you'd like to say goodbye to the people.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, thank you to you, Mike, for the space, and for those that have watched and listened. As I say, take what you want, leave what you want, and I genuinely wish you all the best.
Okay, if you want to see more from Jay or ask any questions, you can pop them in the comments. I'm sure he'll monitor them, and if he wants to give you a response through me, I'll try and sort that out. Or we'll do another video if there's enough questions. If he's up for that. I'm putting him on the spot there, so. Thanks for watching. If you've got this far, well done. If you weren't watching, we'd just be two random guys rambling about rubbish. So thank you. You make it all worthwhile. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.